Hello and welcome to the World Lens Podcast. I am your producer, Curtis Sprung, subbing in today, joined by the man with the plan, Mr. Bruce McIndoe. Bruce, how you doing today?
Doing all right. The world's always an interesting place.
Very true. Now, I do want to preface today's discussion by letting our listeners know that we're currently recording a little earlier than we normally do. This is just to provide some context in case the news changes between now and when we release the episode, which at this point is a very, very real possibility. So we're going to be talking India and Pakistan. Over the course of 4 days, the two countries engaged in fairly intense fighting until everything kind of came to a quick halt. India and Pakistan have, to put it mildly, a contentious history. What's going on here, Bruce, and why is this engagement a little bit different than the ones we've seen in the past?
Now, let's talk a little bit about the past, since that's the prelude to where we are, right? So India and Pakistan have had a long-standing and deeply adversarial relationship since they were partitioned by the British in 1947. So that's how long this has been going on. This adversarial relationship is, I would say, primarily rooted in kind of three areas. One is the dispute since that partitioning in 1947. And both parties claim the entire Kashmir region, with a caveat that there's a little bit of China in there too that is claiming part of that territory. We'll set that aside for now. Then the other one, which was, I would say, a bigger catalyst to the current situation, was what's viewed as ongoing terrorism and cross-border tensions, right?
Yeah.
And so, India has long accused Pakistan for supporting militant groups like the Lashkar-e-Taiba and the Jaish-e-Mohammed, militant groups. So that's been there, and then we have the third leg of this stool is a long history of previous wars and conflicts, right? So starting right out the gate in 47. Then 65, 71, and then more recently what they would call the conflict. I think it's the Kargil conflict in 1999. So all of that's been going on primarily around what they call the Kashmir line of control, right?
Right.
So this is a kind of a quasi-agreed partitioning, but that they're arguing around, but kind of control that line as the red line, right? So that's the background, and the things that I would think were different is what you're asking.
Yeah.
One, right out the gate, is they were using modern jets, modern missiles, drones, and Pakistan was using modern Chinese made weapons, right? So that's hugely different. We can talk more about that, but the other, and what I'll call probably the more important difference, is since 1998, so fairly recently, the two countries are now nuclear powers.
Yeah.
So, making any escalation particularly dangerous, right? Both the region and globally. So that's kind of this whole backdrop of why this is a serious business.
Yeah. So, I mean, you mentioned, that disputed territory of Kashmir. There was an attack. 25 Indian citizens, one Nepali citizen were killed. The latest I saw, it didn't seem like anybody was claiming credit for this. Is this just another one of those terrorist attacks that you talked about earlier that's just are kind of an ongoing thing in this territory?
Yeah, this is actually quite discouraging when I see news articles and stuff on the radio and podcasts. This action was more of a massacre, a deliberate massacre. It's been reported by eyewitnesses and backed up that the attackers went to a group, took the men out, separated the men from the women, pat them down, interrogated each one, removed the Muslim men, and proceeded to shoot the 26 men. That's a very different picture than somebody coming in and spraying bullets into a group and killing people, right? It was very,
Yeah.
very calculated, very. So this, reminds me a little bit of what happened in Kenya with at the mall, right? But anyway, so the Indian government attributed this attack to the Resistance Front, which is again one of these small splinter groups allegedly linked to this Lashkar-e-Taiba terrorist group, and so that's that they put that to them, and that Pakistan was backing them, and that's what brought the two parties into conflict, right?
Hmm.
And this follows, ongoing aperiodic skirmishes and activity on that line of control. So it's constantly festering, and then this was just too much for the Indian government.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah,
Um,
it is.
the good news is the fighting is over right now, but the news of the ceasefire was announced by President Trump on his social media channels. India and Pakistan both confirmed it right afterwards. But I noticed that in those announcements, India downplayed the role of the United States in negotiations, while Pakistan kind of reinforced that the U.S. was involved. What's going on there? Is it just kind of a jockeying for favor or something?
Well, as you were commenting when we started this recording, that right out of the gate, and as we're discussing this, the three parties, at a minimum, India, Pakistan, and the U.S., are all contradicting each other and presenting different facts, right?
Of
So
course.
that's where we sit today. So we'll see how that plays out and what the actual reality is. Pakistan is definitely looking to be legitimized, right, and getting any outside help that they can. So they're there. So and you can see those actions on their part. India is 100% or 180-degree opposite, right? They are a major regional power. They have a long-standing policy of refusing foreign mediation or interjection into anything that is to deal with Kashmir, what they call the Muslim majority Kashmir region. So that's where that stands.
Okay.
So I don't know about currying favor other than Pakistan trying to become a little bit more legitimate.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And one thing that you brought up earlier is that it's been interesting because there was relatively, technological parity on both sides of this conflict. Everybody had sensors and satellites and equipment. Did we learn anything new about, modern combat from this, 4-day conflict?
We are and we will. We may have thought there was technological parity, right?
Right.
But we're learning from this, and obviously still learning. This is all dynamic as we're having this conversation. But as I said before, there's a lot of modern weaponry, advanced missiles, drones, and the modern jets. These long range missiles that were being exchanged, right, from these fighters, were some of them were reported to be in distances exceeding 100 miles,
Oh, wow.
right? So the jet is standing off maybe in Indian airspace, shooting missiles at the other jets, 100 miles away. We call this beyond visual range, BVR. So it's a very different kind of engagement environment
Yeah.
with all the electronic warfare and all the modern technology. So yes, we're definitely interested in learning more. So
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what we hear more from in the future. One of the thing that caught my eye while I was looking at the stories was that news were reporting that this was like one of the largest dogfights between fighter jets in history. I mean, is this kind of the new era of for Top Gun fans here? I thought we kind of stopped doing dogfights like this.
okay, so let's talk about BVR, right? Beyond visual range.
Right,
So
right, right.
this is actually one of this I would say that whole the fighter jet engagement, right, within the battle space is probably one of the most interesting things that will be studied, right? So they not those so the largest is the area that this was covering, right? So if jets are like 100 miles away or 10 miles or whatever, so and it was also the longest. It was reported to be over an hour that all of this was going on. so
Right.
so okay, so that's that. But Of course, India was claiming that none of their jets were shot down. I think they had, you know, I don't know if some French as well as I think a U.S. maybe F-16. I don't remember, but anyway, but the claim is looking very dubious as they start to recover, damaged, uh, equipment that's hit the ground and that kind of thing. But anyway, so thinking about this dogfight taking over 50 to 100 mile area, shooting out of visual range, that I would say for it would be not a very exciting show for Top Gun fans, right? I saw a report that's I think pretty reliable saying that the Indian jets never left the Indian airspace, right? That
Wow.
all of that was kind of over the horizon work. So modern, air combat now happens mostly out of sight, right? So with radar replacing the sharp-eyed pilot that's zooming around and flipping around and turning the jets and that, chasing people's tails. That's not what modern warfare is. And like I said, with these missiles tracking targets from many miles away, the battlefield is no longer really visible to the naked eye. It's all, it's radar and electronics and and pretty soon I would say, especially with the drone activities that we've seen happening in both conflicts, we're going to move away from these large, heavy weapon systems and using much more unmanned uh, attack capability. So that's where it's going.
Yeah, yeah. Not as exciting when Tom Cruise just pushes a button, and then we have to wait 45 minutes for anything to happen, right?
So they'll probably turn it into like a video game where you'll see all this stuff and you can still experience it, but in augmented reality or virtual reality. So
Yeah. So I do want to call back to something that you said. I think you said India was using either some French-made fighter jets and
well,
maybe some
definitely
some
French.
U.S.
That's the big interest that we have in looking at this. Yep.
Yeah, and it sounds like Pakistan was using maybe Chinese-made missiles, something along
Another
those
reason we're
lines.
very interested in this. Right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, seeing that and the claims that Pakistan was able to shoot down those fighter jets. I mean, does that showcase some kind of technological gap? I mean, I know that everybody's concerned about what can China actually do if there's ever going to be, a larger conflict coming up here. So,
Absolutely. So Pakistan had Russian jets, and then now they have these modern made, Chinese J-10 jets, right?
right.
So having that new modern technology, we have not had experience with that in live combat, right?
Okay.
So this was incredibly important, and they were using those J-10s against the French Raphael, I think it is Raphael jets, right? So the French modern jet. So these were the two most like modern jets. I mean, it wasn't like our as capable as some of our jets, but very capable. And so, it does showcase new capabilities, and it confirmed that the J-10 fighters, if it is confirmed that they took the French jets down, which I think it will be, it would signal a significant step in shaping kind of our understanding of how advanced the Chinese, as far as jet fighters, is and have become. So very important. And again, we don't have all the facts, but sure looks like we have parity or better.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm sure the defense contractors are eager to see that whole picture. I mean, what are they gonna do and like take away from this? I mean, when we find out, okay, when we get that confirmation, oh yeah, they actually were able to shoot down this jet with these missiles. Does that mean that they're trying to develop some new anti-missile technology? Are they trying to make the jets faster so they die? What are they gonna do once they get this information, this confirmation?
The first phase of this is we will get a huge amount of data from our overhead and land-based collection systems, right? And
Right.
hopefully we'll get data from India, maybe in the negotiations, but unlikely we would get anything from Pakistan given the Chinese nexus. But this data will be incredibly valuable. as we have seldom, if ever, had this modern weaponry, as well as drones and other things going on in a live fire engagement. So that was definitely going to play into our planning. But I think it's also going to, as I talked earlier, was that this planning is heading in a direction of not of having unmanned vehicles, right? And
Right.
as we have, as those become cheaper and more capable, and robots. I mean, we're looking at this future of warfare where we're going to be pitting machines and AI technology against each other while the humans sit back and root, you know root them on, right? So it's this is all in a state of flux. We've been watching Ukraine and the Russian war, and I think these big, expensive weapon systems are going to go away.
All right.
That's my
Well,
guess.
yeah. So I do want to step back for a minute to U.S. involvement in the ceasefire, just because, I mean, of course, tariffs are still the talk of the town right now, especially with that 90-day pause that the president announced for China. Any chance that those tariffs were brought up during discussions as a carrot or a stick towards either India or Pakistan?
I guess my look at this, very few people, if any, actually know what transpired around the ceasefire agreement. And I'm saying if any because I'm sure that it was at least a four-ring circus.
Right.
Right. We know pretty factually that India and Pakistan had a hotline and were communicating with each other. It's very clear the US was engaged, and I think all as clear that the Chinese were engaged. So you have at least those four parties. Those were not like everybody came together and had a conversation, right? These are all things that are flying around during a very short period of time. So no one actually knows what transpired. Of course, President Trump was very quick, as you mentioned, to take credit for this, as for the U.S. brokered ceasefire on Truth Social, and congratulating the leaders, and I think, quote unquote, using common sense and, I don't know, bigly intelligence or something. And so while that was kind of initially acknowledged by both parties in a way, very quickly they backtracked from that, right? So, as far as like how much the U.S. was actually driving the ceasefire has been disputed, right? So that's kind of where we are there. So while you have all that gone, I just don't know, if or how tariffs would actually have played into the discussions. I think that's such a minor thing when you're looking at two nuclear powers moving up the escalation ladder, right? So I
Yeah.
seriously doubt, that was a big issue. Maybe it was some side remark from the U.S. side, but I think when you have two nuclear powers and an escalating conflict, I think trade and tariffs is not going to be front and center.
Right.
My guess.
Okay. So let's look into that crystal ball, Bruce. I mean, this was a fairly abrupt and serious period of fighting, even though it only lasted for a few days. Does this conflict, how does this inform the future of that India-Pakistan relationship going forward? I mean, do you think things are going to get worse, or do you think it's, getting better?
Okay, I'll give you the easy part first. I do not expect I do not expect the situation to get better. So there's still a lot of tension remaining. The underlying issues, the three things that I laid out in the beginning, remain the same. And the situation could, or I shouldn't say could, can escalate, again. So that's kind of like I can put that on the table and feel very confident. But I also would state, and it could get worse.
Yeah.
And the reason that is there was a whole series of unilateral actions that were taken by India and by Pakistan. But the one that just really catches me, and I think other analysts, is the action taken by India to suspend the Indus Waters Treaty.
Hmm.
That is really, really bad.
Okay.
So India placed this long-standing, I think 65-year-old agreement in abeyance, right? So citing the Pakistan's alleged support for cross-border, terrorism, blah blah blah. This agreement had been a symbol of cooperation between India and Pakistan, despite all these decades of hostility, right?
Yeah.
The agreement has allowed the two countries to share the watershed area that feeds into the Indus River and is critical for Pakistan's economy. Their economy depends on agriculture, which employs almost 70% of its rural workforce. And the Indus River irrigates about 80% of the country's farmland. It's a lifeline for millions and millions of Pakistanis, right?
Yeah.
So if India were to take, I think they have the eastern part and Pakistan has the western or vice versa. But anyway, they could actually control and limit the water that flows to Pakistan. So that would cripple their agriculture. It would trigger, widespread food insecurity, economic instability, blah, blah, blah. This would be viewed as an existential threat to Pakistan,
Yeah.
right? So this could easily spin out of control where they're sitting back saying we must do something significant. And so this is like the one thing of all the actions that were taken that is serious, and we need to watch it and pray that they don't pull that lever and create a real issue, a tangible issue to Pakistan proper versus just Kashmir.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like in this case that, as the rest of the world watches, you mentioned it a few times, India and Pakistan, they're both nuclear states. I mean, it sounds like everybody's going to be kind of lobbying them to both kind of calm down here, regardless of where you stand.
Yes. So I guess, as I would look at this as right now, the world needs a stronger global governance structure than we have right now, right? We're creating this multipolar world with
Yeah.
the Chinese and the US, Western led, potentially Europe, India rising, all of this going on. We lack a cohesive, strong governance structure. So this clash proves that deterrence is not the same as stability, right? And we have to
Right.
remember we have a lot, we have North Korea, we have China, we have other nuclear capable states, and so as these precision weapons proliferate and mediation becomes more multipolar, as we're seeing, at a minimum we have to strengthen our diplomatic guardrails. And even in that regard, especially the U.S., I feel like you've got leadership that's way out ahead of diplomacy, right? And making, and so that's not helping, right? So
Yeah.
so I guess and I say, this whole situation is forcing people to kind of reevaluate economic risk models, and they've got to treat these flashpoints as not regional, but like you said, global challenges. So we all need to be turning around and not just saying, okay, this is over, and then drifting away. The world needs to remain engaged, and we have Israel and Iran right on the heels of this. And if we don't pay attention to this and not be kind of lulled into this just continuous, spit and spat across the line of control, both with China and with Pakistan, then we could see ourselves in a world of hurt, and that would be discouraging at best.
Yeah, we can only hope for the best, right?
Well, hope is not a strategy, so
Very true.
let's do something more concrete. Yeah, that would be my appeal to the global leadership. Absolutely.
All right. Well, leaving on that incredibly positive note, Bruce, thank you so much for being here today. If folks want to get more of your insights, where should they go?
You can find me on the World Trade Center Institute site with the board, and also McIndoe.com.
All right. Thank you so much. And you can find us online at WTCI.org or follow us on all social platforms at WTC Institute. We will see you next time.